Hello and welcome to everybody. I'm going to wait for just a moment and make sure that our live is syncing up across all of the channels. And so say hello to everybody that's online. So let me introduce everybody. Perhaps I should do that. Myself, Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert. I will be running lives more or less every month, and with my great friend and partner in crime, Laurie Richardson. Hi, Laurie.
Hi, Janice. Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Hi, Lauren.
Hello.
And we have a very, very honoured and special guest who's actually my side of town at the moment, Lauren Bailey, who you will all know because we're talking about women in sales next month. We have International Women's Day, but we call it the whole month. I think we deserve a whole month, if not the whole year.
So year.
Oh, yeah. So we wanted to start off this conversation. So hopefully with me doing a bit of a filler here, we're all online and ready to rock and roll. So I wanted to start off with a quote from Michelle Obama, who says, "No country can ever truly flourish if it stifles the potential of women and deprives itself of the contribution of half of its citizens." So this is what we're talking about today, women in sales. And we need to stop starving a good 50% of the population. We need to encourage more women into sales. And so it's really important to celebrate the success that we've already made, but actually not be complacent that we've still got a long way to go. So I spoke at the Women in Sales Summit with Mary Shea, who's done a lot of research into this area that talks about 90% of sellers and managers in their sales motivation survey agreed that the diverse sales team is more successful. We all agree that. But 92% find that DE&I initiatives are valuable. That's great. Nevertheless, we have such a small percentage of sales leaders that are women, and even smaller those that are diverse. And only a third of sellers come from the diverse groups. So we still have a long way to go. So I think it's a good time to talk about She Sells as well, the book, Laurie. So tell us why you wrote the book and your motivation behind it, and why it's so important that all people, sales leaders, not just women, read the book.
Right. Thanks, Janice. Yeah, there was a little confusion among some men that She Sells is a book for women. It's actually it's for managers and leaders of companies who tend to be male in most of the industries that I work in SaaS and tech and manufacturing and distribution and on and on. Just about every industry is there's an underrepresentation of women. So when I say I want it all, I really just want half. I just want to see half of the sellers and leaders as women. And as we go higher, I want to see more women there. So the book was really written as a foundation for some of the issues that are in the industries, not about women fixing themselves, because I think that's the tendencies. People think, well, if women want to do it, they would just sign up, and they don't like sales, and they don't this and they don't that. But in fact, a lot of women love sales, and a lot of women are leaving your sales teams because some are really bad right now. There's some really bad behaviors since the economy changed a bit. I talked to a woman on Monday who said that her entire DEI team at a SaaS company who you would be very familiar with was all shut down, as well as an enablement team. So, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that we can still do.
Right. Yeah. So, Lauren, I know that you have a lot to say about this, certainly in the campaigns that you've been spearheading and whole kind of reason for your business. There's so much that needs to be done. So share some of your perspectives of what you're finding in the industry.
Yeah, well, I think that women excel in revenue. And I don't think that our leaders, who are predominantly men, are resistant to having women in leadership. It's just been traditionally male dominated, and that's the status quo. But when we talk about making a change, we have to do better than just not be resistant to it, right? And so much of what Lori shares in her book is what we also share in Girls Club, #Girls Club or wearegirlsclub.com. We have to make a conscious effort to try to recruit more women into revenue, where study after study after study shows they perform very, very well. And in fact, usually outperforming men in achieving quota and revenue and profit targets. If you're just to tell stories about it, I talk to so many folks who'll say, yeah, I only have a couple women on my team, but they're at the top. So there's great benefit to getting more women into revenue. But I've talked to hundreds of women who have been part of Girls Club in trying to move from that individual contributor into leadership, which means they're high achievers, right? They're top performers. And they're traditionally resistant to the sales roles, to the revenue roles, right? So how do we get past that is the question, because as leaders, we have to go out and recruit. We have to make some changes to our job descriptions. We have to make some changes to our hiring processes to reverse the trend, right? And that's the important part. That's why She Sells is so important. Laura, you must give 15 different strategies of what we can do to do a better job.
And team environment too. We need to change the environment so that it's not exhausting to women to come in and have little, what they call them microaggressions, little things that chip away at you over time. We really need to think about the environment, having a professional workplace, and for a leader to say, folks, we have a professional workplace here. And don't just assume people know that, because people don't know what you mean until you tell them. You're the leader and you need to set the tone.
Mm-hmm. Don't you often hear that women need to back themselves, and that women are not confident enough, or women do not put themselves forward? And I don't know what your view is, that all of my women friends are confident. All of my women friends back themselves. So it's really interesting. You often hear this. I wonder if we're expecting, in the male-dominated sales environment, we're expecting women to act like men, to show the same behaviors as men. And if they don't show those behaviors, then they're not confident, they're not backing themselves, as opposed to the culture and the environment that you're talking about needs to change. Yeah. It needs to expect different things and value different things, and not judge it from the environment that is more dominant at the moment.
Well, I think it's going to take both sides, if you don't mind me jumping in first,
no,
right? So we do behave differently. Big newsflash, right? Women and men are different. And I agree with the fact that as women, we are less likely to toot our horns. We are less likely to take risks. We are less likely to negotiate and to advocate for ourselves. I've got a fun story to share if we have a moment. But it takes men coming and recruiting women into revenue. It takes men encouraging women to take risks. It takes companies investing in training skills before taking the position, right? It takes posting criteria of jobs and promotions and assignments ahead of time so that more women will apply. Because if it's just, hey, you're going to pick somebody from the team, we all kind of know how that goes, right? We feel on the outside and that we're not part of that club and that we're not going to get selected. But when we post criteria, we tend to apply more. But we'll only apply if we meet all of the criteria. It's that perfectionism bias, and our brains literally are wired differently. So a woman won't apply for that position unless she has 10 out of 10, 100% of the criteria. A man will apply at about 60% of the criteria. So yes, we've got to stand up and use our voice and advocate and take more risks. And the company, the leaders need to reach in and encourage the women to apply and to take those risks before maybe they feel ready, because we know ready means perfect.
Which means we need men involved in this. It can't be women. Like we have a panel here all talking about what needs to happen. We need the men to step up and get involved. And there are some great women. And in fact, Women's Sales Pros is going to be highlighting some of those companies this year that embrace having women in leadership, that encourage it, that set a great tone. And I'm really excited about that. Another thing you said, Lauren, Lauren talked about how our brains are wired, but we're also raised this way. We're raised, anyone watch television? I mean, watch some commercials. When my son was 2 years old, he sat with another 2-year-old boy and they said they were going to buy women on television. I'm going to buy that woman. And the other one said, I'm going to buy that woman. And I was a single mom. My friend was a single mom. We were horrified. Our jaws dropped. And there's so much from society that we get about what a boy is, what a girl is, and how to grow up and how women should, you can't be too outspoken, but you need to be outspoken enough. It's very difficult, but it's possible.
Well, it's called the double bind theory. Sheryl Sandberg did a great study about this, about when women speak up in meetings, right? And there's great studies that will show that women do not speak up in meetings as often as men do. The only time they will is if the women are the super majority in the group, which means 4 out of 5. And at that point, they will still only speak up 20%, or they're allotted equal time. We see this all the time. Our girls club meetings, what's cool about it is that it's vast majority women, right? Badass women from all different industries, individual contributors getting into management. So when we go live together in our training classes, we've got 50, 60 women and a couple men. We love having men involved. But here's the thing. A man will speak up every single time, even if he's the only guy there. But because we have the super majority women, they'll actually use their voice and feel a little bit more comfortable. So I see a comment in from Lauren saying, gosh, I'm sick of this, this talk track that we're not confident. And the truth of the matter is, Lauren, you are, and I am, and Lori is, and Janice is. And that's why we're leaders in revenue. And I love hanging out with other incredible, strong women in revenue. Yeah. But the vast majority of the women I meet, and I have a chance now to meet thousands, they're just as comfortable there. They're a little bit more timid. I don't like it.
I used to think, I remember Lauren Bailey, because we have another, nice to see that you're on, Lauren, also. But I used to feel like, no, women are, because when I onboarded women and men into sales roles, the men were they had just as much lack of confidence, but they were quiet about it. Women are more verbal. And so we'll say, oh, I got to call Lauren Bailey. I don't know. I hope she takes my call and this and that. And the manager goes, oh, I think she might, she's not very confident. Where the man feels the same way. He just doesn't say it. But Lauren's run in, you've talked to these women. And so I believe it. But I did a tour with Salesforce one time, and all my panelists who are women sales leaders, there were times where we'd ask a question and say, how did you overcome your lack of confidence? And the women on the panel were like, I never had that issue. Yeah. So it's, there's a couple things working here.
Oh, it's true. It's true. Laura, you and I spoke at a conference once. It was a women in sales conference up in Seattle. And there was about 80 women in the room and about 4 men, right? Prior to this panel discussion, I was talking to the 2 men, trying to make them feel comfortable. And it turned out that one of them was a brand new rep and he was standing with his manager. Okay. And the rep, we'll call him Brad, turned to his manager and said, oh, well, that's interesting. This is, I would tell him what Girls Club is about. It's about helping women promote into management. And he turned to his boss and he said, how do you make management in this company? And his boss said, oh, okay, well, you start here, Brad, and then you go to this level, and then you go right. And he walked him through it, and everything was great. We do the panel. We have a lovely time. We're taking questions an hour later. The cutest little SDR in the very, very back raises her hand, right? And she's, I've been the top performing SDR here for about 1.5 years or 2 years. When is it too soon to start talking to people about how to get into management? 2 years. Brad asked on his second day.
Yeah, and I would contend that's how we were raised.
Mhm.
We were raised, don't speak up, Lauren, wait your turn, don't stand out. That's how I was raised.
Keep it quiet, right? Just do your thing. We keep waiting to be noticed, but it doesn't happen in revenue because we're surrounded by people who will raise their hands and make the noise.
And we can prove it now because look at university sales programs. Women excel. They're off the charts. Then go to top sales leadership. Where are those women? Where are the women?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It happens in corporate.
So the audience, please keep posting your questions. We've got one here from Carol, who we all know really well. So she says, should we call out these microaggressions as women, or is that counterproductive? What are your thoughts?
Do I go first, Lauren?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think we do, but we, I feel like I'm falling into a stereotype in how I'm going to coach this because we have to be careful about how we do it. I think that our job is not to make men wrong, but to educate and to include. So when somebody makes an offhanded comment that makes a woman feel small or less than, right? I don't think the right way to do it is make a big stink and make that person feel stupid. I think the right thing to do is to one-on-one in a private setting, give that feedback and say, right, you said this, and what I'm sure you intended was this, but the way it was heard was this, right? And I just need to give you that feedback that makes me feel, makes others perceive. And again, I'm sure it was unintentional, but what could be more helpful is if you would phrase it like this.
And I'm going to disagree a little bit. I'm going to
agree.
I'm going to agree that in a small group setting, that's appropriate. But if it's a big room, and our friend Anna Baird once told the story about how she was in a meeting and her CEO said something that was totally inappropriate from her standpoint. And rather than calling it out in a room full of the people that report to the CEO, she just walked out of the room. And so then it was obvious there was something wrong, but she didn't say something to make anyone feel bad. And she told the CEO later how she felt. And he said, oh, yeah, I totally blew it. And he went back to everybody and said something, because if no one sees that it affects you, then they figure, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. Because I used to be that way. I tell people one-on-one. But in fact, when it's a room of, when there are people that are waiting for you to take the lead, you need to find kind ways to let people know that, maybe there's another way to word it. And I think that that's very important.
I love that because Anna's tough, right? But she saw her role as the lead there, right? I mean, I believe she was COO when she did that. And she's representing the 1,000 women behind her. And so she made her feelings known. Good for her.
We have another question from another Laurie as well. So all the time I hate this narrative that we're not confident. We're talking about confidence here. We are confident and we have to back ourselves. It's the environment we are in that needs to change. So what's your thought about the environment needs to change?
Well,
how do we start to change that environment?
I'll go first and I'll say it's both. It's both. And because I know Lauren Bailey works with reps and women wanting to be in leadership that do need to develop those muscles. But the environment needs to support it as well. And so that's why I wrote She Sells, because that's the foundational stuff. None of it is about women changing. There's nothing in that book, very little, other than saying, women ourselves need to do a few things, but it's all about the environment.
And how to make that change. Yeah, I love it. And you're right. I approach it from the other side. Girls Club is a certification program, and we teach the skills to be in revenue management. We do confidence building. We learn how to ask for promotions. We learn how to negotiate salary. We spend time practicing getting in the spotlight and tooting our horns and working with leaders and advocates back in the organization, right? I think that we have to learn to use our voices more and advocate for ourselves, just like Anna did, right? But at the same time, it also takes an organization leaning in, which, by the way, people don't change for change's sake, right? And they don't do it easily either. So it will always be the status quo until we teach them, right? Or we go in and change it ourselves.
I'm going to share a little story. I was hosting a women in sales panel at a conference, and halfway through this, when we asked for questions, the first hand to go up was a man, and he started off with, "What are you going to do? I really get all that you're saying, but I find women are not coming forward. I want to know what you on the panel, what are you going to do?" And it was panel of women. It was all of this pointing the fingers.
I feel sorry for him already, Janice.
Before I went to the panel, it's like I need the mic here. And it's like, well, when you point the finger in that way, really you should be pointing it back at yourself, as in, what are we going to be doing in order to change the situation? Because women are not the problem. We're not there to fix it, and we don't always have the power, and we need allies. So we need to collectively look at, really, what is you as a company, what are you doing that you're not attracting people? You may be putting adverts, but like there's all of that about, you've just mentioned about the way we write the adverts and how we select and all of that. But we really need to start pointing the fingers at ourselves first before we start pointing the fingers at other people. And women do not to be fixed, and it's not their problem. It's our problem. He was very not happy with the answer. He wanted us to be responsible for, changing the situation that we did not create. So I don't know if you've had any experiences like this, where people have pointed the finger that women are the problem, that you need to fix things. What's your thoughts and experience here?
Well, Laura, you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Listen, I think we've said it before. I think it takes both. It absolutely takes both. Hell no, we're not the problem. Give me a break. That's just silly. And yes, I've had some of that experience as well. It's been fun. We put out once a year, we open applications to join our certification program in Girls Club. And about once a year, I get, some dork out there like, "Hey, where's the men's club? Why can't I join?" I'm like, oh, that's just, I don't even have to say anything, because the rest of the community just takes that jerk down. And it's silly, right? I think
it's called sales.
It's called business. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sometimes called life. That's just the truth of the matter, right? There's just eons and eons of the business world and the revenue world in particular being male dominated. We are trying to change a culture. So I think it's really good for us to focus on what we can do to change that culture, like some specific actions that we can take from all sides to make it better. And in fact, that I saw a question, I think is going to come in here in a second, from Bryn, saying, what can a company do to change that culture and to take some ownership? And Lori, I know that's exactly what you wrote your book about. So the first thing they can do is go buy Lori's book. She sells. Do you want to leak a couple tips that you give in that book, Lori?
One of the best tips I ever got was from a male leader friend of mine, who said that he was on a panel. So he was one of these, enlightened men who was really good at hiring women, really believed in having an inclusive sales team. But he was on a panel once, and then after the panel, he went to the women on his team who were in the audience, and he said, "Okay, what did I screw up? What am I missing?" And they gave him a few more ideas, because you never get to the point where you're like, "Oh, I do this, so, we hire women." And, people can, there are some men I've talked to over the years that can get very defensive over the fact that they, that they can't be seen as not, being perfect or or being totally inclusive. And so but this gentleman, he goes and gets more feedback and improves the team even more. So that's a good first step.
I love that. I've got a couple other tips I can share from some of the great allies involved as mentors in Girls Club. And one of the things that Joe, I think it was, who did this, one of our allies of the year, he created a private Slack channel for just the women in the group and himself, so that they had a safe place. If there were issues that came up, like these microaggressions that we talked about, where they could rely on him. I think that you should also know that every year we do an informal survey of the 75 women that are a part of Girls Club and all the mentors, et cetera. So a good 100 folks. And we say, hey, raise your hand if you've ever been treated inappropriately at a work function. And what we're talking about is getting hit on by guys on their team. You want to guess what percentage of the hands go up?
100%.
100% every single year.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's another thing that the men can do, is see this bad behavior and nip it in the bud immediately. Yeah. Not the blind eye, but making an example of the jerk who drank too much and behaved inappropriately. In terms of recruiting women, I learned I was doing it wrong too, right? I have a sales performance company called Factor 8. And when I was hiring salespeople, I was using typical sales language, right? People who are aggressive and competitive and, want to win and crush quota. And
killer closers.
Yeah, that language is a huge turnoff to women. Studies show that we are drawn to and excel more in the relationship building, right? More in uncovering needs and learning about our customers and building values and solving problems, which is what every decent sales organization in the world's trying to get better at anyway. Well, if we put more of that language in, we'd attract more women. If we showed more women on our websites and in our hiring processes, that attracts. You bet they check. I wasn't smart enough to do that. It was normal for me to be the only woman in sales leadership. Not anymore.
And if you have four white male co-founders and all your board is white males, you might want to just remove the photos. I mean, I'm not saying
step one, take down the picture.
Yeah, I'm not saying be deceptive, fix it, but that's the first place people go to look.
Yeah. We don't want it. We've all been there, right? Yeah. We've been mistreated in these organizations. We've been underpaid in these organizations, and we don't want it again. So they'll check.
So I've got a few as we kind of wrap up. I'll kind of come back to you for your kind of closing point. But, a few of mine would be, it's important for women in sales to be visible and to make sure you have a voice, whether that's inside or outside of the organization. So, use your other women in sales as allies, but you've also got to track and verbalize your accomplishments. So, practice doing that. You've got to track it in order to verbalize it. So just keep a record of it. And also, no one knows what's going on in your head and what you want unless you tell them. So you need to actually say this, I want your job. Show me, how to get on the track to get to where I need to be. And then I'd also say to women as well, if you're not in the right environment and your gut is telling you that you're just going to come up against barriers, get out as quickly as possible. Go where you're not tolerated, but you're actually embraced for, all of the qualities that you have, and get out of poor working environments as quickly as possible, because it does nothing for your confidence. So over to you, Laurie. What would be your closing points to support more women into sales?
Yeah, when women are really motivated, it's more about helping others than putting themselves out there. So I say, when you think about posting on LinkedIn, think about the women that you can help by sharing your story. Think about the women who would love to hear about your journey. And don't think it's just about you, because it really isn't. You can actually be a role model no matter what role you're in, BDR, SDR, on up. We need your story, and I hope more women will share them.
Laurie, that's so good. Here I am saying I'm a confident woman. I've risen in top, and I hate bragging on LinkedIn, but that's advice I can take. and share some wins. So, right, because everyone's a role model to someone. I love that. I'm going to ask a final action item to go encourage a woman. If you've got a woman in revenue, right, or maybe service, and she's doing great, go and initiate the conversation, because most of us are waiting to be noticed, right? You're doing a great job. What are you thinking about for your career? What's the next step for you? How can I help?
Fantastic, fantastic. Now we've got another live session where we have an incredible guest. We have Alice Hyman, and we're talking about how we can encourage more CEOs to have a command of sales. Sales is the engine of all organizations, and so that's the subject that we'll be talking about on the 6th of May. So I'd like to thank our special guest, Lauren Bailey, and thank you for all of your contribution. And my partner in crime, Laurie Richardson, thank you very much. And
great. My pleasure. Thank you, Janice. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. See you all later. Take care. Thank you, ladies. Brilliant. All right. I really will see you later, Lauren.
That's awesome.
I know we're going to dinner.
Have fun, you
guys. Zach Heineck.
Oh, good.
Cool.
That's nice.
Yeah, I've never done a live either.
Oh, wow. Well, have fun. When are you home?
Saturday.
Oh, cool.
It's my longest time away.
Wow, your family will appreciate you.
I know, right? And I'll appreciate them a little more too. I will be a much more patient mom.
It's awesome. That's why you got to do it. That's good. Well, take care.
Oh, Bryn is telling us we're still on. Thanks, Bryn.
Oh, hey, Bryn.
Yeah, Janice and I are going to go catch dinner here in London.
Have
That's going
fun.
to be great.
All right,
well,
we'll talk soon.
Folks here. Thank you. Good to see you.
Okay. Bye, everybody.